Hello everyone, welcome back to the session. So before the break, we were talking about development and extremism, and we understood the origin of Naxalism in India. We studied the root causes, we understood the Maoist doctrine. So now let's head towards the second half of the chapter and understand the spread of Naxalism. How did the movement spread across different parts of the country? See, to understand this, we again have to look at the developments that took place between 1960s and 1980s. This was a crucial period as far as the rise of Naxalism was concerned. As we studied, in 1967, in the West Bengal, Bihar, UP belt, a branch of Naxalism had already started. Correct? But parallelly, from the 1970s, another branch of Maoism took root in India in the Andhra Pradesh Odisha belt. So there were two different branches of Naxalism headed by two different outfits. Is that clear? In the West Bengal, Bihar, UP belt, it was the Maoist Communist Center of India which was operating, the MCCI. This was the Maoist outfit that triggered the Naxal movement in Naxalbari and expanded its influence over the next few years in the West Bengal, Bihar, UP belt, which covered today's Jharkhand as well. Then, a few years later, as Naxalism was gaining influence, from 1970s, we saw the rise of another group called the PWG, the People's War Group, which was centered around the Andhra Pradesh Odisha belt, covering today's Chhattisgarh, parts of Madhya Pradesh, and parts of Maharashtra. So, two branches of Naxalism, led by these two outfits, took root in the country by 1970s. They scaled up their violence, they raised funds, they got more recruits as the developmental divide kept on increasing. As the developmental divide increased, Naxalism also grew and expanded to different parts of the country. It's very important to understand this link because towards the West Bengal belt, there was one Naxal group gaining influence, and towards the south, the central and southern parts of India, there was another group gaining prominence, and these outfits became notorious very quickly. They managed to raise funds. Initially, there was some support from China as well, as I mentioned. They procured arms and weapons. They set up military level training for their cadres, and they started carrying out major attacks against Indian security forces. The local police and state police were the primary target, and when central forces were brought in to combat Naxalism, even the central forces were targeted. They would target the government administration as well, the government buildings, the panchayat offices, local politicians, elected leaders. They would all be targeted by the Naxals, and the scale of violence kept increasing. By 1980s, Naxalism was at its peak, led by MCCI, PWG, and few other smaller Maoist outfits. So at one point, there were few multiple Maoist groups, but the major ones were MCCI, operating in West Bengal, Bihar belt, and PWG operating in Andhra Pradesh, Odisha belt. So as the threat increased, as this became an interstate problem, it became a national security problem. The government of India responded along with the state governments and launched major counter-insurgency operations. Anti-Naxal operations were scaled up in 1980s, and the goal was to wipe out these groups, to target the leadership, their funding, to destroy their stronghold areas, and to take control back in these so-called liberated zones. So as India stepped up the security operations with the help of the state police forces and the intelligence agencies, these operations gave some success. But however, we could not wipe out the ideology. We could not wipe out the movement. By 1990s, we actually saw a decline in Naxalism. By 1990s and early 2000, because of these security operations, there was a decline in Naxalism. Is that clear? This was great news for us. Our security operations were succeeding. We were managing to weaken the groups, hit their leadership, and we were focusing on their funding channels as well to curb Naxal activities in the country. But as the movement started declining, we saw the spread of Naxalism to some other pockets of the country as well, especially towards Western Ghats. In the Western Ghats of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala, right, in the forested areas. For example, in the Shimoga district of Karnataka, you have a place called Agumbe, a very popular hill station. Then in the Nilgiris, towards the Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka border, right, there you have few indigenous tribal communities. There you have plantation workers as well. So they became the focus of the Naxals and they started expanding their influence. In the Wayanad region of Kerala, even there, the local indigenous communities and the plantation workers were exploited by the Naxals, and they made an attempt to make a presence in Western Ghats as well. So as they came under pressure, Naxalism broke out and it spread to few other pockets as well. Even in the Delhi Punjab region, where there were many industries, there was a big agrarian divide, right? Even here, a small Naxal presence was noticed, where Naxal groups were spreading their influence amongst factory workers. They were supporting factory violence led by factory workers against the management. So such incidents kept happening. But overall, there was a decline in Naxalism. But as I told you, we could not wipe out the ideology. We could not wipe out the movement entirely because we never addressed the root causes. Such a strong ideological movement cannot be defeated just by adopting a security approach. If that was the case, we would have tackled all forms of extremism by now. Just by using force, you cannot win such ideological wars. This was a war against the Indian state. The Naxal war against the Indian state was rooted in genuine root causes. So back then, the governments were not willing to acknowledge the genuine root causes, be it the government of India or the state governments. They just saw this as a security problem. They saw this as a security issue that they could deal with by using security forces and intelligence agencies. Even though security operations give results, it won't be effective to wipe out the ideology itself. Ideologies can't be defeated by force. You can target the groups, wipe out the leadership, etc., minimize their attacks, their ability to carry out attacks, but you can't defeat the ideology by using force. That too when there are genuine root causes present. The developmental issues, the maladministration, the poor governance, this was not addressed in the 80s and 90s. So even though Naxalism was weakened, the ideology thrived, it sustained. And these outfits, which had become weaker by early 2000, they decided to form a strategic alliance. Remember, I mentioned earlier that Mao Zedong, he advocated the Maoist groups to be ready to form strategic alliances if required, to pool their resources together and to form a formidable force to fight the state. That is exactly what happened in early 2000. In 2004, there was a landmark development, a major development as far as India's security situation was concerned. At a time when MCCI and PWG had been weakened, they were almost defeated, they came together and merged to form the CPI Maoist. The Communist Party of India Maoist was born. Is that clear? Today, this is the Maoist outfit operating in the country, posing a threat to India. This insurgent group has been declared as a terrorist organization. under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, the UAPA. This is the primary anti-terror law that we have in the country. Is that clear? Under this anti-terror legislation, the Home Ministry, which is responsible for internal security, it has the power to designate extremist organizations as terrorist organizations. So the PWG and the MCCI merged together to form CPI Maoist, and they shifted their base of operations as well. Let me explain this. Please look at the map here. These maps are based on data from the Home Ministry. It helps you understand the spread and evolution of Naxalism. During the peak of Naxalism, 180 plus districts had come under some kind of Naxal influence, and there was a Naxal presence in more than 180 districts. Can you imagine that? Back then, we had around 600 odd districts. Today, we have more than 700. But I'm talking about early 2000 and even before that. Roughly, we had 550 odd, and then it became 600 districts. So out of that, 180 plus districts, they had come under Naxal influence and they had some kind of Naxal presence. So nearly 33% of India's land area was affected by Naxalism, especially in central and eastern India. And now it was spreading towards Western Ghats and towards northern India as well. So this was an alarming concern for India. The security operations, what they did was, it put pressure on these groups. The MCCI in West Bengal and Bihar was weakened. The PWG in Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra and Odisha belt was weakened, especially the Andhra Pradesh police. They adopted a very unique strategy through which they almost wiped out the PWG. They saw tremendous success in their counterinsurgency operations. We abbreviate this as COIN operations, COIN ops. COIN ops stands for counterinsurgency operations. So even though India weakened the groups, we pushed them to a corner. We could not defeat the ideology because the root causes were never addressed. So these groups which were weakened, they came together and established the CPI Maoist. And as they were being targeted from all the sides, they were pushed into a corner and they shifted their base towards this region. Which is this region? This is the Chhattisgarh Odisha belt. The densely forested areas, the Dandakaranya region of Chhattisgarh and Odisha, became the new base of operations for the CPI Maoist. You can see a detailed map here, which remains the most active zone for Naxals in the country, even today. In the last 20 years, in the last 2 decades, this is where Naxals have been very active, especially in the Chhattisgarh Odisha belt over here. Districts such as Dantewad, please make a note of this. You should know the districts as well, where Naxalism is very active. Dantewad, Bijapur, not the Bijapur in Karnataka, but the Bijapur here. Gadchiroli in Maharashtra, Bastar, Malkangiri, Sukma. These have become the hotspots of Naxalism in the last 2 decades. As they were pushed from West Bengal, Bihar and UP, from Andhra and the southern parts, they were cornered here. They formed a strategic alliance, set up a new outfit and established this region as their new base of operations. So because of this merger, the CPI Maoist very quickly escalated its violence against the Indian state. Since they had regrouped, the security pressure also had gone down because we were complacent as well, assuming that we had almost ended Naxalism. This gave an opportunity for the Maoists to regroup, to pool their resources, their funds and weapons together and build a stronger, formidable organization called the CPI Maoist. So from 2004 onwards, major attacks started happening against Indian forces during this period. From 2004 to 2010, we saw a major uptick in Naxal violence. The anti-Naxal forces of the state police, the central forces like CRPF, which were deployed, right? They were all targeted by the Naxals, and major attacks occurred in Sukma, Bastar, Dantewad, Malkangiri, and they became the hotspots of Naxalism. Now, can you see Gachiroli here in Maharashtra? This region, this part of interior Maharashtra, it's an agrarian region. It's a rural agrarian belt. But this area, the Vidarbha Amravati region, it's a semi-arid region. It doesn't get good rainfall. So farmers really struggle over here. Most years there are droughts, crops are wiped out, and farmers, they end up borrowing money from money lenders because they can't get easy loans from the banks, from the government. They end up borrowing from money lenders, which pushes them into a debt trap. Because money lenders, I hope you know, they charge very high interest rates and they fall into a debt burden. So because of the debt pressure, many farmers commit suicides. In this part of Maharashtra, the farmer suicide rate has been extremely high in the last few decades. Now, this was happening when rest of India was growing at a very fast rate. By 1990s, India's rapid growth had started. The LPG reforms had been introduced by Narasimha Rao and Finance Minister Manmohan Singh. India started registering massive growth, attracting foreign investments, and other states and cities were growing at a rapid rate. Migration had started from rural areas to urban areas. So the divides had increased, the economic income divide, class divide had increased. So while parts of the country were developing at a fast rate, millionaires were getting created, farmers in Gachiroli were committing suicides, hundreds of them every year. So this created a permanent support base here for Naxals in the Amravati Vidarbha belt in Gachiroli district. Even today, there exists a strong support base because the agrarian issues, the rural issues, farmer issues have not been addressed. Same with the tribal belts. The tribal belt of Chhattisgarh, tribal belt of Odisha, tribal belt of Eastern Ghats in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana region. These core issues which were not addressed became the rallying point for these extremists around which they built support base and continued their war against India. So during this period, Naxal violence increased and it reached a point where then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, he labeled left-wing extremism as India's biggest internal security threat. Is that clear? I still remember, I think it was 2009, 2010, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was addressing the DGP conference. Every year, the Intelligence Bureau, which is India's domestic intelligence agency, it organizes a DGP conference. It was held recently as well, just few weeks back. It happens every year. All the DGPs of the states are brought together. I hope you know DGP, the Director General of Police. He's the senior most IPS officer of the state. He heads the state police. So all DGPs are brought together from across the country and a conference is held in Delhi under Intelligence Bureau. They discuss all security issues, all kinds of security challenges facing the country and chart out a roadmap to deal with them. This conference is always addressed by the Home Minister and also by the Prime Minister. Even recently, Amit Shah and Prime Minister Modi, they both delivered a speech during this conference. So back then, when Naxal violence had gone up, when CPI Maoists had become a credible threat again, in this conference, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh stated that left-wing extremism is today our biggest internal threat. Not even Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, because that is something we can deal with. It's an external threat. Since Naxalism is an internal domestic threat, it's a domestic, homegrown movement with limited foreign and external support. He referred to this as the biggest challenge for India because we had to address the root causes. Without addressing the root cause, the lack of development, we could never win the ideological war. And this acknowledgement was officially made by the Prime Minister himself. So the last 20 years has seen a different approach from India. To counter Naxalism, we have not only relied upon the security approach. Of course, security operations are needed because this is an extremist group. We have designated this insurgent group as a terrorist group. So we have to deal with them as a security problem, use our security forces, intelligence agencies to target them. But that can't be the only approach. The previous mistake in 1990s was that we just focused on the security approach without acknowledging the root causes. But starting with the Vajpayee administration and continued by Manmohan Singh's administration, there was an open acknowledgement by the government that yes, governance has failed in these areas. Development has not happened. There is a gap in development. That is why extremism is thriving. This acknowledgement was critical because along with security approach, we adopted the development approach as well. So in the last 20 years, the Indian state has not only focused on security operations to counter Naxalism, but parallelly, simultaneously, we have tried improving the development indicators. We have tried to provide for better welfare, better administration, better governance in these affected areas so that we can pull the people away from Naxal influence, reduce the local support, and this is crucial in a conflict zone. Is that clear? I'll give you one more example from Odisha. Have you heard of a region called Swabhiman Anchal? Can someone tell me in the comments, yes or no? Have you heard of this region in Odisha called Swabhiman Anchal? Has anyone heard about it? Siddharth says yes. Others? Have you heard about it or not? Okay, some of you have heard about it, some of you haven't heard about it. Swabhiman Anchal is a tribal forested region in Odisha which was cut off because of a dam project. A dam which had been built, it created a backwater which surrounded this region and it became like an island. Swabhiman Anchal became like an island as it got surrounded by water because of the dam project. So this cut off Swabhiman Anchal from rest of the country. It lost connectivity with Odisha. Connectivity is crucial for economic development, for welfare. In a tribal belt, a large project such as a dam project causing such hardship, displacement, and impact on welfare and development affected the local population. So in Swabhiman Anchal, Naxals spotted the advantage. They reached out to the tribal communities and the local communities and started influencing them to support Naxalism. They even got a lot of support and Naxalism established a strong presence in Swabhiman Anchal. But later, we have achieved success. How? We focused on the security approach. Security forces targeted the Naxals and the presence here. Parallelly, we focused on the problems of Swabhiman Anchal. As it was cut off and it had become like an island, its welfare had been compromised, development had been affected, basic trade and movement was compromised. So connectivity was restored. The central and state governments proactively worked to restore connectivity to Swabhiman Anchal. Bridges were built, boat services were launched, buses were launched, better security was provided, the local economy was improved. And today, Swabhiman Anchal is largely free from Naxalism. And all of this has happened in just 20 years. Right? The rise of Naxalism by exploiting the developmental issue and how India has countered it. All of this has happened in 20 years and today we see a decline in Naxalism and Naxal activities in Swabhiman Anchal. So today the focus of countering Naxalism has to be a twin approach. You can't just focus on security operations. You might weaken the group. You might eliminate some Naxal leaders, arrest some of them, cut off some of their funds and prevent some attacks, right? It might lead to decline in their violence, but it will not end their war. It will not end their ideology, because Naxals are prepared for a protracted conflict. They believe in a protracted war. And this was stated by Mao Zedong himself. Mao Zedong, in the Maoist doctrine, he has stated that you will not achieve victory in few years, maybe not even in few decades, because the state is powerful. To defeat the state, overthrow the state, the masses have to fight a protracted war. It could take decades, maybe even a century. So Naxals are ready for that. From the beginning, they are prepared. They are radicalized in such a manner that they are ready for a prolonged conflict. This principle it's integral to Maoist ideology. So such a strong ideology cannot be defeated if we do not address the root problem, the root cause. So in the last 20 years, there is a better focus on development and improving governance, accompanied with better security operations, and this has given results for India. After 2010, the Manmohan Singh government launched major security operations targeting the Naxals. Parallelly, development initiatives were taken up. This has been continued by the Modi government from 2014. There have been better targeted security operations accompanied with development and welfare schemes and initiatives, which has given us success against Naxalism. Today, from 2014 to 2023, you again see a decline in Naxalism. Is that clear? According to the Home Ministry, Naxal influence is reduced to hardly 20 to 30 districts. Imagine, during its peak, it was 180 plus districts where Naxal influence and presence was noted. Today, it is less than 20 or around 20 to 30. All right? This is the influence they have, which is very limited today. This is the presence they have. And previously, Naxal strongholds, where they had a very strong control, where they had almost thrown out the administration, these strongholds were at least around 60 to 80. In at least 60 to 80 districts, they had created a stronghold when back in 1980s and 1990s. Today, the strongholds have gone down very significantly in hardly 10 or maybe 15 districts, or even less than that. This is where they have a stronghold today. So clearly, we have been better in fighting Naxalism in the last 20 years. Credit will not go to just one government or one party or one leader. It's a collective effort. It's not just the central government, because state governments play a big role. District administration plays a big role. It's a collective effort. Starting with Vajpayee administration, followed by Manmohan Singh government, and now the Modi government, in coordination with all the state governments and district authorities. Collectively, we have fought this war by adopting this twin approach. On one hand, development governance has been improved to bridge the deficit, the gap in governance, and parallelly, targeted intelligence-led counterinsurgency operations have been carried out with better strategies, better technology, better intelligence gathering, and this has yielded results. Today, Naxal influence is down to hardly around 20 to 30 districts. Their strongholds are limited to maybe 10-15 districts, not more than that. Even recently, there have been major Naxal attacks, like in Bastar, in Sukma, in Gachiroli as well. Naxals have carried out attacks against CRPF and state police forces, but compared to before, the violence has definitely gone down because of this combined effort of the state, the district, and the central government, and the twin approach which has been followed. Is that clear? So please understand that the Naxal threat is definitely on the decline, but it is not ended. We haven't wiped out the threat. It's not a major threat as it was before. Today, we are in a much better position because of the developmental approach and the security approach. So, acknowledging the failure of governance was very important, which was done in the last 20 years. The Planning Commission, which existed, it clearly pointed out the gaps in governance. The Manmohan Singh government publicly acknowledged, yes, development has failed, welfare has not happened. We have to deliver better administration. The policy has continued with better security operations, and that has yielded results for India. You can see how Naxal influence has gone down. The Home Ministry data clearly shows the decline in Naxal attacks and Naxal violence, and especially the areas that they control. Visit the MHA's website. They have a separate Naxal division, a left-wing extremism division, and you can look at the data and you'll realize how Naxalism has declined over the years. So this is success for India, but don't forget, we can't be complacent. We can't assume Naxalism is defeated. It's not. The ideology is still active. Naxal cadres are still very active. They still have the ability to carry out major attacks. Clear? But compared to before, Naxalism is declined. Definitely it's gone down. So now, if we have to end this war, if we have to defeat the ideology itself, we have to continue this approach. Provide better welfare, better development with better security. This combined approach will give us results, and hopefully in the coming years, in the coming decades, we should see an end to Naxalism. Is that clear? Now, coming to the last part of my discussion, let's talk about the strategies in detail. Because there can be a mains question here. UPSC can specifically ask you as to what strategies has India adopted to counter Naxalism, explain in detail. So just saying that we have followed a developmental approach and security approach is not enough. You should know about some initiatives, some strategies, tactics followed. You have to give those examples to substantiate your argument. So let's look at this in slight detail. First, we'll talk about the development initiatives, how we have improved governance and administration and provided better welfare. And then we'll talk about the security operations and the security doctrine, which has been followed in the last 20 years. Let us start with some developmental strategies, such as Integrated Action Plan or IAP. This was a development program which was implemented by the Home Ministry. See, generally, Home Ministry does not implement development programs, right? But since the program was focused on Naxal areas, especially the most backward tribal districts, it was directly implemented by the Home Ministry itself. It was conceptualized and designed by the then Planning Commission. Today, you don't have the Planning Commission. It was replaced with the Niti Aayog. But when Planning Commission existed under the Manmohan Singh government, a major developmental program was launched with special focus and attention given to the backward tribal districts in the country. Under this program, 60 backward tribal districts were chosen. After careful research and surveys, careful studies with the Planning Commission involving all the concerned ministries, this plan was designed and it was implemented by the Home Ministry. What was unique about this plan was that the structure was different. The way in which it was implemented was different. It was designed to give quick results. It was designed to address local problems in the affected districts and villages to win the support of the tribal community. That was the intention behind it. So 60 backward tribal districts were chosen for implementing the integrated action plan, and dedicated funds were given for every district. It was launched in 2010 and it continued until 2012. It was implemented for 2 financial years. In the first year, each district would get 25 crores of dedicated funds, and in the second year, 30 crore rupees would be given. So in total, 55 crores for each district. This would be a dedicated fund, a special fund for these districts to achieve better development at the grassroots. Now, some of you might ask, sir, 55 crores is not a big amount. In today's world, you can't really take up any big project with just 50 crores, 25 crores in first year and 30 crores in second year. It's not enough, correct? But let me tell you, the program was different. It was designed in a particular way. The idea was to take up small projects at the local level which can deliver a high impact. This was the idea. The idea was not to build some big mega projects, because that would take many years. It would take a lot of funding. There would be a lot of opposition as well. It would be difficult to achieve immediate results. Since Naxalism had been flagged as a major threat by the Prime Minister, it was flagged as the biggest threat for us. Results had to be achieved on a priority basis. Immediate noticeable results was necessary. So the goal here was to take up small projects at the local level, at the village level, at the district level, so that the impact is higher. The locals will feel that the government cares about them. The government is delivering welfare for them. So for that, 55 crores was actually a good amount. That too, 13 years ago, this was a very good amount to achieve results by taking up such impactful local projects. So what the government did was, instead of giving the funds to the state government, where there could be leakage and diversion of funds due to corruption, the funds were directly given to a district committee. At the district level, a district committee was constituted in these 60 selected districts. The funds would be given directly to the district committee. This committee would have the responsibility to identify the issues and use the funds to take up these small, high impact projects. So the district level committee played a critical role in its implementation. The center planned the program, gave the funds, designed the structure of the program, but actual implementation was done by the district level authorities. The district committee was headed by the district collector, who is an IAS officer. I hope you know that. As IAS officers, usually as junior to mid-level IAS officers, you get to become the DC of the district. It's known by different names in different states. In some states, it's called district magistrate, DM. In some states, it is deputy collector, deputy commissioner, or district collector. The names differ from state to state, but the role is exactly the same. Essentially, this IAS officer, usually a junior IAS officer, gets this critical responsibility of heading the whole district administration. That is why IAS is a preferred service for all the aspirants. It's a very powerful position. The entire district administration will be under the DC or the DM. From land administration to revenue, education, healthcare, even law and order. Basically, even the SP of the district, who's an IPS officer, as far as law and order is concerned, will take orders from the IAS. Imagine maybe someone who's your senior, who has cleared the exam, he has become an IPS officer, he has been appointed as the SP of the district. He's a superintendent of police. But you clear the exam later, you're still a junior, you become a DC. The SP will still be under your command, only for law and order matters. SP heads the district police. This IPS officer will be the senior most IPS officer there, again, usually a junior ranked officer. The whole district police is under the SP. But as far as maintaining public order is concerned, the DC can give orders to the SP. So a junior IAS officer can give orders to a senior IPS officer. That is how powerful the role of DC is. Understood? So this district committee was headed by the district collector, who's the senior most IAS officer of the district, with the SP, the IPS officer of the district, along with the district forest officer from the Indian Forest Service. So basically, the top three All India service officers at the district level, they were brought into this committee. They will be responsible. They will be in charge of implementing the program. The funds will be with the district committee and they will consult with the locals. It's not that it's their full discretion. They will have to consult the panchayat leaders who are elected. They are the local elected representatives at the Zilla Panchayat, the Taluk level Panchayat, the Gram Panchayat. They have to talk to the elected Panchayat representatives, consult the local people as well to identify their grievances. This was the beauty of this program. It was flexible. It was a highly flexible program. If it was a rigid program, it wouldn't give results because problems will be different from state to state, district to district, village to village. Maybe in one district in Jharkhand, better roads might be needed at the village level. In another district in Odisha, maybe better schools are needed, water tanks are needed. In some other district in Maharashtra, mobile connectivity might be needed, right? Small irrigation projects might be needed. So the issue, the grievances will differ from place to place, from state to state, village to village, district to district. To account for this, the scheme was made flexible, meaning customized solutions can be provided at every district. So this district committee, which includes the top IAS, IPS and forest service officer, they will consult with the panchayat leaders and the local people and identify the local issues, the most important grievances of the local people. And they will use the money to execute that particular project. And that too within a quick time frame, so that the projects are quickly completed to deliver high impact, to have high visibility, to show that the government is providing welfare and improving governance. So that is the unique aspect about integrated action plan. Even though it was implemented only for 2 years, it had a high impact in terms of bridging the development gap. State government played a role in monitoring the program. The development commissioners, who are senior IAS officers at the regional zonal level, they would monitor the utilization of funds and how the implementation is going on at the state level. Got it? Every state is divided into different zones, and each region or zone will have a development commissioner under whom multiple districts will be under his control. He'll be coordinating with all the DCs. So the development commissioner, who's IAS officer of that state, will oversee the program, and even the planning commission would monitor the implementation and the progress. The member secretary of planning commission was part of the committee at the central level to monitor the implementation of the program, to ensure funds are not misused and it is used in the right way. The whole expenditure was audited separately by the CAG, the Comptroller Auditor General of India, which is a constitutional authority, would audit every single expenditure to ensure that not a single rupee is wasted or diverted. This kept a check on corruption. Corruption was kept under check. Also, state government was largely bypassed. The center would work directly with district authorities to transfer the funds and implement the scheme, with state only monitoring the implementation. Because corruption usually is higher at the state level. So by bypassing the state, corruption levels were brought down, plus CAG audit and effective monitoring led to the success of this program. The goal was to focus on certain constitutional provisions and legal provisions and improve the delivery of those services. For example, in polity, you would have studied about 5th schedule, the scheduled areas, which are tribal districts notified by the president. They get special provisions with regard to their development and welfare. The governor of that state, right, in the 5th schedule areas gets special powers for tribal welfare. Similarly, you have something called 6th schedule for a few northeastern states, for Assam, then Meghalaya, Mizoram, and Tripura. Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Tripura, they are under the 6th schedule provision where autonomous councils are created. We will study that separately under Northeast insurgency. So here in the other tribal districts, which are under 5th schedule, which are notified as the scheduled areas by the president, where the governor of that state has got special powers to promote tribal welfare. So these districts became the focus and tribal welfare became the priority of the action plan. Laws like PESA, the Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas Act, Forest Rights Act, these provisions, these legal guarantees that were provided, constitutional guarantees that were provided, they became the priority under Integrated Action Plan. Understood? Under Forest Rights Act, forest dwelling tribes are supposed to be given basic rights, traditional rights. Their forest dwelling rights, their land title rights have to be recognized. Their right to collect forest produce is recognized. Their community right to protect the forest is recognized. So through Integrated Action Plan, the funds were used in such a way to guarantee the delivery of these rights, these legal constitutional rights that were promised. That became the focus. Better implementation of PESA, meaning better decentralization, better extension of Panchayati Raj system to the grassroots. Because in scheduled areas, Panchayati Raj system won't exist. That's why PESA Act was brought in 1990s to extend Panchayati system to scheduled areas under the 5th schedule. So the focus was on better decentralization, strengthening the grassroots institutions at the Panchayat level, at the Gram Sabha, Gram Panchayat, the Taluk and Zilla Panchayat. Work with them to implement high impact projects. Focus on better delivery of forest rights. Ensure that tribal forest dwelling communities are given access to forest produce. And the forest produce they collect, it should be marketed because they collect rubber, honey, fruits and berries and tobacco. Right? This basic produce is collected by the tribal communities and they sell it in the local market. Through IAP funds, better markets can be created for them. So they can sell the forest produce and have a better livelihood, which supports the tribal community. So this is how success was achieved under Integrated Action Plan. Is that clear? This is one example I'm giving you. One example of a well-defined development initiative that gave good results. There are many more. In newspapers, if you're reading editorials and columns, every now and then there will be articles highlighting development initiatives in Naxal areas. So you can mention them, give them as examples. Like recently, Prime Minister Modi has launched a dedicated welfare program for particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Just a couple of months ago, PM Modi launched this ambitious mission to provide better welfare for particularly vulnerable tribal groups in the country. You can give that as an example because many of these tribal groups, they are residing, they are dwelling in Naxal affected areas. So giving them better services, better development through such schemes will help in their welfare. It will bridge the development gap and help in countering Naxal ideology. Understood? I'll give you one more example. The Saranda Action Plan. This was a state level plan implemented by Jharkhand with the help of Rural Development Ministry. It was similar to Integrated Action Plan. It was designed on the lines of Integrated Action Plan to create rural livelihood opportunities. The Jharkhand state government launched it with some support from the Rural Development Ministry. And the focus was to support local livelihood for farmers and the farm labor, because usually they don't find enough job and income opportunities that affects their livelihood. So they were given skill development, vocational training, given easier loans so they can start their own businesses and small enterprises to sustain their livelihood. So that is one more example at the state level. Like this, there are many schemes by Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, by the current government of India. All you have to do is in newspapers, if you come across any such schemes and initiatives, just make a note of it. Just make a note of the name and what the scheme is focused upon, and you can mention that directly in the answer as an example. Just one or two lines about it is more than enough to substantiate your answer. Another example of a development initiative, a unique development initiative, is Civic Action Program. What is Civic Action Program? Civic Action Program is a development initiative implemented by the security forces that are deployed in a conflict zone. Instead of the civilian administration implementing the program, the security forces which are deployed in conflict zones, they implement this program. Now, some of you might be wondering why. Why security forces are involved in a development initiative? What's the reason behind it? There's actually a strong reason. See, in any conflict zone, the security forces, they act as the state representatives. You take Naxal corridor, you take Jammu and Kashmir, you take Northeast India, where active conflicts are going on, where we are fighting insurgency and terrorism. The security force is the face of the Indian state. Correct? It could be CRPF and other paramilitary forces which are fighting Naxalism. It could be Indian Army as well in Northeast India and in Jammu and Kashmir. They're all involved in counter-terrorist, counter-insurgency operations. Now, these forces require local support. And as you can imagine, our security forces may not get the local support because locals will view the security forces with suspicion. They will have a doubt about the security forces because they might use excessive force. In many cases, locals might be supporting the extremists. If not directly, they might sympathize with the extremists. So in such an area, if there is no local support, it becomes very difficult for the forces to operate. It is important to build trust, to build a bond with the local people and create faith between the forces and the locals. Because in a conflict zone, things can go very wrong. It can go badly wrong. Let's say there is an encounter. Take Jammu and Kashmir, for example. Indian Army is involved in a counter-terror operation. They're targeting a terror module. In this encounter, civilians might get trapped. Civilians might get accidentally killed. Or sometimes there might be rogue officers in our army or in our security forces who might deliberately commit fake killings and human rights violations. When such incidents happen, right, the locals will start hating the forces. They'll resent them. They'll not share any information with them. They'll not support them. Rather, they'll support the extremists. So in such a delicate situation, it's important to win their support, to gain their trust. So that is why a development program is implemented by the security forces themselves. They are at the forefront of implementing the Civic Action Program. So these security forces are given special funds. The Indian Army in J&K and Northeast India gets special funds for Civic Action Program. Similarly, CRPF and other forces involved in anti-Naxal operations, they get special funds for Civic Action Program. So under this, they take up some basic initiatives. See, security forces, they have a lot of equipment with them, right? They have a lot of resources with them. For example, security forces will have their own medical units. They'll have a team of doctors, medicines available with them. So using that, with little bit of additional funds, they can run free medical camps. Understood? They can set up free medical camps in the conflict areas and provide free healthcare services by using their own team of doctors and medicines, which is already available with them. They will also have engineering equipment with them, right? They can use that to repair roads, bridges, build water tanks, etc. There are many areas which will be disconnected. There may not be a bridge. Security forces which have engineering skills, they'll have dedicated teams of specialists. They can build a small bridge, repair the road, or provide that basic infrastructure at the local level to help the local people. Or during times of disaster, right? They can rescue people. They can carry out search and rescue operations. They will have special communication equipment. including satellite phones. They can use that to extend communication to remote, unconnected areas. The officers, they can provide coaching classes. CRPF and Indian Army have done that. Group A officers and senior officers who have cleared exams like CDS, UPSC exams, etc., right? Assistant commandants who clear the UPSC assistant commandant exam, or even IPS officers who clear the civil services exam. They already have experience about how to prepare for this exam. So they will conduct weekend classes, special coaching for local youth to train them for banking exams, government exams, Group B, SSC, railway exams, and UPSC and state PCS exams. These are services that they can deliver using the resources they already have, using the men that they already have. So they get some additional funds for this, and such a program where welfare is taken up by the security forces is called Civic Action Program. So when people see this, they will start trusting the security forces. They'll look at the good side of the security forces. They'll have faith in them. That creates local support. Tomorrow they'll come forward to share intelligence, which can be critical in targeting the extremists. Tomorrow they will deny support to extremists. They will not give them shelter or funds. Rather, they'll report it to the police and security forces. And based on that intelligence, we can carry out targeted operations. So that is why Civic Action Program, it's a mix of development cum security initiative. It's essentially a development program implemented by security forces, but there is a security objective to create the bond between locals and the security forces. Understood? Then we have improved telecom connectivity and internet connectivity in Naxal areas through dedicated funding. Under the telecom policy, we had Universal Service Obligation Fund, which now is being renamed, right? A new telecom bill is being introduced. A new law is coming into place. So this now is undergoing a change. The fund is being renamed. So previously it was called Universal Service Obligation Fund, and now the name is getting changed. So through these funds, special allocation is made for Naxal areas for connecting the remote regions in the country. Got it? The private companies, the private telecom and internet service providers, they are contributing to this fund because see, they can't reach remote areas and operate there because they won't get subscribers, they won't make a profit, because creating that back-end infrastructure is very expensive. To set up mobile towers, to lay the cables and provide the connections, it's very expensive for a private company. And if they don't have a business viability, right, they will hesitate to invest in that. So as a result, rural, remote areas, forested areas will become unconnected. And today, you know, mobile and internet plays a critical role in driving economic growth. Digital connectivity is absolutely crucial. So what the government said was, see, we understand private companies have no motive to enter these areas. They don't have a subscriber base. So what government said, give us some funds. A part of your revenue, deposit this into the fund. It was mandated by the new telecom policy of 99. So the telecom and internet companies mandatorily, they will deposit a small percentage of their revenue into this fund. Now the government will use the money coming from the private sector to extend telecom internet connectivity in these remote areas. Government institutions like BSNL, right? They will venture out. They will create the initial infrastructure needed, and later the private companies can come and take over the infrastructure and they can extend their services. So this is a great idea of public-private collaboration. So private companies contribute funds. Government will use this to provide telecom internet connection in the remote underserved areas. So within this fund, special allocation is made for Naxal areas. This fund is for the whole country. It's now being renamed and restructured. It's meant for the whole country, for any remote underconnected area. But within this, there is a special allocation for Naxal areas to create mobile towers and provide that connectivity that can drive economic growth, that can bring digital connectivity to these regions. Then a scheme called Roshni was implemented. It was a skill development program for tribal community in Naxal districts. Since tribals have very limited skills, they may lack good education, right? And their livelihood is very limited. Apart from basic agriculture, hunting and collecting forest produce, and some basic art, handicraft, they don't know anything else. So they are given skill training, skill development, vocational training. For example, tailoring courses are conducted, or how to become a carpenter, or how to improve their pottery skills, right? How to become a weaver, how to work on handlooms, right? Or to develop their sculpting or painting skills if they have, right? Or how to become an electrician or a plumber. Such basic skills are provided, and the idea is to ensure tribals can protect their own livelihood. They can find jobs, they can start their own small enterprises, small shops and businesses, which will sustain their livelihood. So Roshni was an important skill development initiative, specifically meant for Naxal districts. Apart from all this, central and state governments together, center and the states, they have implemented compensation and surrender policy. This is also crucial as part of the development initiative in a conflict zone. Because in a conflict zone, civilians are caught in between the extremists and the security forces. So civilians might lose their lives. The terrorists might threaten them. They might kill a family member or injure them, right? Or sometimes they get caught in an encounter, and our own forces might have shot a civilian, accidentally injuring or killing them. Or as I told you, there might be rogue officers committing human rights violations as well, right? Where fake killings and torture has been committed. So in such incidents, it's important for the state to respond immediately. We have to reach out to the victims, their families, console them, and give them a immediate compensation. A substantial amount has to be given. You might ask why. It's very essential, it's very critical, because if the state does not intervene, then extremists, they will intervene. If the killing has happened at the hands of the security forces, extremists will come to the family members and they will brainwash them. They will tell them, see, your father, your brother got killed. The police, the security forces have killed them. So it's better you join our fight and target the state. It will aid their radicalization, their recruitment. So it's important for the state to intervene with compensation, not just on humanitarian grounds, but as a developmental and security strategy as well. Similarly, we should have a surrender rehabilitation policy. These insurgents, militants, even terrorists, some of them deserve a chance to come back into mainstream. Is that clear? We have a surrender policy in the Naxal area, in Northeast India, in Jammu and Kashmir as well. Because many of the youth, they could be misled. They could have been taken on the wrong path from a very young age. They would have been brainwashed, indoctrinated. So such people deserve a chance to come back to normal life, to abandon this path and come back to the mainstream. So for that, you need an incentive, or else there is a big risk for them. If they surrender, they might be targeted by the extremist group later. So if there is a surrender rehabilitation package given by the state, where the state gives them protection, right, gives them a house, a job, and some funds as well to, start their life, start their new life, then extremists will have an incentive to come and surrender to the police and security forces. Because eventually they are our own people, our own citizens. You can't win these wars by targeting everyone, right? We can't go and defeat Northeast insurgency trying to kill all the insurgents. We can't end violence in Kashmir with a plan to kill everyone. That doesn't work. It only leads to more violations, more resentment, and creates a vicious cycle of violence. So as a responsible state, India is well aware that we have to give these opportunities to our people. That is why surrender compensation policies are critical in a conflict zone. Is that clear? They are active even today. In Northeast India, in Jammu and Kashmir, in Naxal corridor, compensation and rehabilitation packages are available. Some are implemented directly by the center, some by the state governments. So these policies help in bringing some of them back into the mainstream and keeping them away from the radical extremist elements. Got it? So these are the various strategies we have tried out in the development domain, in the welfare domain. There are many more. You can add to the list. I'm just giving you a sample. You can talk about improved road connectivity, how electricity, water connections have been provided, right? You can mention the PM Ujjwala scheme, Jal Jeevan Mission, right? Various livelihood schemes that we have, the Ayushman Bharat initiative, how healthcare is improving, how education is being improved. Give all these examples and you can show how better welfare is being provided specifically to the Naxal hit areas. Got it? Next, coming to the security approach. What security approach has been adopted by the center and the states? What institutions have been created? What schemes are there for security expenditure? What technology, weapons are being used? What forces are being deployed? What is the role of different forces and agencies? Right? What is the doctrine that we are following in our security operations? That is important to understand. So, India, that is the central government with the state governments, we have taken the fight to the Naxals. We are very proactive in our fight today. We are very aggressive as well in our fight against Naxalism. So there is a need for coordination here because see, dealing with Naxalism is primarily a state subject. Primarily, it's not the responsibility of the center. Primarily, it's the responsibility of the state police. Why? Because this is essentially an internal security problem, a law and order problem, right? So the concerned states have the primary role. Policing, law and order is a state subject. Got it? So state police have the primary role. The center will act as the enabler. Since it's an interstate threat, it's become a national threat. It requires coordination between different states. States will lack the resources. That is where the center steps in to supplement the resources of the state. So the fight is primarily led by the state police. All the affected states, they have dedicated anti-Naxal forces. They have raised anti-Naxal forces to lead these operations against the Naxals. And they are backed up, supported, and supplemented by the center. The center has deployed the CRPF as the primary anti-Naxal force. CRPF is a central armed police force which is under the Home Ministry. Just like your state police is under the state government, even the central government has few central armed police forces which is under the Home Ministry. These are essentially the paramilitary forces of India. So CRPF, the Central Reserve Police Force, right, has been deployed with the Home Ministry to assist the state police in anti-Naxal operations. Along with CRPF, few other forces as well, like BSF, ITBP, SSB, some battalions, even they have been deployed, but primary role is of CRPF. It works closely with state police to lead the anti-Naxal operations. Now, these operations will require a lot of funds, advanced technology and intelligence gathering capabilities, advanced weapons, training, compensation, infrastructure, right? And even planning and coordination. All this is critical since multiple state polices will be involved, right? The central forces like CRPF and others are involved, and intelligence agencies like IB would be involved. There is a need to address these security related expenditures. More funds will be needed, better training, better weapons, better compensation for the soldiers who are fighting this war, better weapons and technology, planning and coordination, and better strategies and tactics. So this is where the center comes into picture and plays a critical role because MHA is also responsible for internal security, right? So within MHA, a dedicated division has been created, the left wing extremism division. The left-wing extremism division has the responsibility to fight Naxalism. Is that clear? So within the Internal Security Department of MHA, a division, separate division for left-wing extremism has been created at the national level. So this division implements few security-related schemes. Just like we have development welfare schemes and programs, there are security-related schemes to provide funding to deal with the increased expenditure, to modernize our police forces, to give them better training and weapons. We need additional funds. The center pitches in with the funds through these security-related schemes, which is implemented by the left-wing extremism division. The left-wing extremism division plays a critical role in coordinating with all the stakeholders. It will keep track of the trends in Naxalism, how it is spreading and evolving, right? It will work with all the central ministries and state governments as well. Sometimes coordination will be needed with Defense Ministry, with Indian Army and Indian Air Force. Coordination will be needed with state governments, state departments, right? So this coordination at the central level and with the state governments is achieved by the left-wing extremism division. This is the role of the left-wing extremism division. Please make a note here. You can get a 10-mark question. UPSC might ask you to write a note on the role and functions of left-wing extremism division. A direct, straightforward 10-mark question. So you can say that this division under MHA has the sole dedicated responsibility to deal with Naxalism at the national level. It implements security-related schemes. I'll introduce you to the schemes as well. We'll take a look at some of these schemes, what kind of funds are given, for what purpose. It mainly helps in modernizing our police forces and our security infrastructure. So those funds and the schemes for that is implemented by this division. It monitors the overall situation across states. It collects data, tracks the evolution, the spread which is happening, where the attacks are happening, where the funds are coming from. It will pool all the intelligence together, right? So based on the monitoring, it will deploy the central armed police forces, the CAPFs, which are deployed in the state to assist the state police. Those decisions are taken by the left-wing extremism division, that how many CRPF battalions to be given, to which state, where will they be stationed and deployed. If CRPF is not enough, should we deploy some troops from BSF and ITBP and SSB? That call, that decision is made by this division. It reviews the overall security situation and works closely with the states and the central ministries and departments. That coordination is very crucial. It will have to work with Rural Development Ministry, Panchayati Raj Ministry, right? The Finance Ministry, Defense Ministry, the Armed Forces, and various other stakeholders. So this coordination is achieved by the left-wing extremism division. That is the role and function of this critical division of the Home Ministry. So now let's take a quick look at the security-related schemes. You don't have to by heart all the points. I just want you guys to remember some of the names of security-related schemes and why it is implemented. I've just given you the additional details, but if you can remember some of the schemes and what purpose does it serve to improve security operations, that's enough. So let's take a look at this. Let's discuss the National Policy and Action Plan that was adopted in 2015 by the left-wing extremism division. Let's look at the pillars of this strategy, and then I will explain the specific tactics and operations through which we have weakened Naxalism. See, in 2015, the Modi government, which took over from Manmohan Singh government, was still dealing with a major challenge. Even though Manmohan Singh government had quite effectively tackled Naxalism, the problem still continued. In 2015, Naxals were still quite active. So to integrate all the strategies, a National Policy and Action Plan was launched. It was launched by the Home Ministry under the left-wing extremism division. This provides for a uniform national plan, which is customized at the state level, implemented by the states. So this policy and action plan is based on 4 pillars, 4 main strategies. One is improved security operations, intelligence-led security operations. Second is better development and welfare. Third is to ensure that the legal constitutional rights, entitlements are delivered to local communities. And fourth is about perception management. These are the four pillars of this action plan and policy. Security refers to effective security operations, right? Which we are studying as of now. Development, we already covered it, the welfare schemes, the development initiatives. That is, of course, connected with delivering the legal constitutional rights and entitlements, ensuring that fifth schedule provisions are effectively implemented, ensuring that the National Food Security Act, the Forest Rights Act, right to education, such legal and constitutional rights and entitlements are delivered to the local people, to the local communities. That's the third strategy. Then comes perception management, which is counter propaganda. Now, this is very important in a conflict. Since age-old times, information war has always been a critical part of warfare. Today, it has become even more important. In the world of intelligence, we refer to this as PsyOps, psychological operations, because the narrative of a conflict is very crucial. The public opinion, the global opinion about a conflict is very critical. Now look at Russia-Ukraine war, Israel-Hamas war. Every side is promoting their own narrative, their own propaganda. Russians are justifying the war by planting articles in the media, on social media, trying to show that West was the one which created the problem, which justified Russian invasion. Ukraine and Western countries have their own propaganda to alter the perception, to show that Russia is an evil nation. Same with Israel and Hamas, right? Hamas justifies the brutal attack on 7th October, saying that it was a retaliation against the oppression of Palestinians. Israel has justified all its actions. It's killed more than 23,000 people, right? It's been accused of a genocide, and it still justifies it by saying that Hamas is a terror group and it's a terror threat, where innocent Palestinians are also getting killed. So every side in any war, in any conflict, will build their own narrative, their own perception. This information war is critical because this is what shapes opinions. Even in India-Pakistan rivalry and tensions, in India-China rivalry and tensions, the intelligence agencies, they engage in psychological operations. We call it PsyOps or information warfare. It's become all the more critical in today's world of fast communication, right? With digital media, with electronic television, internet and social media, communication is a critical part of warfare. Sending out the right message, promoting your own agenda while countering the extremist agenda. You have to do both. You have to discredit the opponent, you have to embarrass them and out and show their ideology to be on the wrong path, right? You have to put down their agenda and their ideology while promoting your own achievements and your own ideology. So information war is crucial in any conflict. So here I told you that Naxals are very good in their propaganda, right? Mao Zedong said that Naxals have to be strong in communication. They rely heavily on their propaganda machinery to brainwash the local youth. They exploit the developmental gaps to radicalize the local community and turn them against the Indian state. So that is their propaganda. So it's important that we counter their propaganda with our own perception management, with our own psychological information operations. So this would mean that we should highlight the achievements of the government. See, we need not create fake news. We need not resort to those practices. Government need not lie. It need not spread any wrong information. Not needed. We just have to spread the right information. Highlight the achievements of government initiatives. Showcase it to the local people. And at the same time, counter the ideology, the agenda of the extremists. This is what we can do through perception management. The government can work with media organizations, use social media as well, and communicate what the government is doing for the people, especially in the affected regions, local people should know that these are the changes that have happened in the last 20 years. Definitely things have improved. The development gap has been reduced. So people should know what exactly has been done. That communication, that messaging should be there. This helps in countering the Naxal propaganda. They are blaming the government for failing, for not being there for the people. We can show that that is not true. It might have been true at one point, but it's not true anymore. We are proactively working towards welfare of all these regions. This message has to be highlighted. At the same time, we have to counter their lies. Extremists rely on fake news, on wrong information. We have to counter that. We have to show that their ideology is wrong. Their agenda, which is focused on violence, capturing state power, is wrong. It's driven by a political agenda. So this is called perception management, right? So these are the pillars of the National Policy and Action Plan. Security operations, development, delivering the rights and entitlements, and perception management. The 4 pillars of National Policy and Action Plan. So under the security domain, we are implementing these important security schemes. Security Related Expenditure Scheme, SRE. Under this, the state governments are encouraged in the Naxal corridor to modernize their police forces. As you know, state police forces are outdated. They lack the motivation. Their recruitment is flawed. Their training is problematic. They don't have advanced weapons with them. They don't get good compensation. You can't expect such a state police force to fight Naxals who are better trained, better equipped than your state police. So it's important to modernize the police forces as they are leading the fight. As state police has the primary responsibility to counter Naxalism, it is important to modernize the state police forces in the Naxal affected districts. So these states have been chosen under the scheme, the SRE scheme. And if the state government spends on police modernization, that cost will be reimbursed by the center. The central government will bear this entire cost. It is going to reimburse that amount the state government has spent on police modernization. Let's say state police have procured better bulletproof jackets, better weapons, or they have built a bomb defusal squad, right? Or they have raised a new anti-Naxal force. They've got better training by working with Indian Army, right? Any such modernization, be it with technology, with weapons and assets and gadgets, training, their compensation, any such changes, reforms that state police will carry out, the cost which is incurred, this will be reimbursed by the central government. The MHA will pick up the bill. So first, states have to do it. They have to spend from their own pocket, from their own budget. And once they have done it, the MHA will step in. The left-wing extremism division will take the bill and reimburse the cost. So this is a very, very important scheme to modernize our police forces at the state level, especially in the Naxal-affected states. There are other similar schemes which are related to each other. We have special central assistance implemented in 30 most affected districts. Here, funding is given for improved infrastructure, because security forces also rely on good infrastructure. To fight Naxals, security forces have to move around. They need better roads, better bridges, better communication. Or else how can security forces be effective in a forested remote area, right? It's important to fill those critical gaps in public infrastructure. It will not only aid the economy and provide welfare and development, it will help our forces to move around quickly, to mobilize quickly and carry out their operations more effectively. So there is special central assistance for filling those critical gaps in public infrastructure. Special infrastructure scheme, which is another parallel scheme, mainly to fortify the police stations. And another scheme was launched dedicated for that again, because Naxals mainly target the police stations. They target the security camps because their opposition is against the state, right? Their main target is, of course, the security forces. Plus, they also know that In police stations and in security camps, there will be armories where weapons are stored. So Naxals, they prefer to attack police stations and security camps, not just to send a message, not just to threaten the state and kill as many police officers as possible, but also to loot weapons, to steal weapons from the armories. So this is a concern. So we have to protect our forces, give them adequate security and protection, and protect the armories as well. That is why dedicated funds are given to fortify the police stations and security camps, to create better barrier walls, fencing, electric fencing, CCTV cameras, right? Barrier controlled entries. There are many advanced technologies available today to set up perimeter security around a police station and a security camp. So that requires a lot of funds. So this is borne by the center to fortify some selected police stations in the Naxal hit areas. Funds are given for civic action program, as we already discussed. It's both a development initiative and a security oriented initiative. Funds are given for hiring helicopters and other services which can improve the effectiveness of our security forces. It can make them more effective in their operations. Right? They might need helicopters to quickly move around, mobilize the troops, to evacuate casualties. So separate funds are given for that additional cost. There is a separate media plan designed to counter the false propaganda of the Naxals and also to highlight government initiatives and schemes. This is part of perception management or media management, right? So these are the various security related initiatives. There is also an initiative to promote road construction, separate initiative for mobile tower establishment in the Naxal areas where funds are given from Universal Service Obligation Fund. The aspirational districts initiative of the Modi government, which is focused on the backward districts of the country. It includes 35 Naxal affected districts as well. Under the aspirational districts program, the Modi government is focused on improving development in some of the backward districts. And in this program, 35 districts selected are Naxal affected districts. So like this, we have a mix of development and security related schemes, initiatives that are focused on improving our fight against Naxalism. Is that clear? So I think we can take a short break. It's already been 1.5 hours again. So let's take a short break. We'll come back and we will discuss the last part. We are left with the strategies, the security strategies followed by various forces, which forces are involved, and we'll discuss the doctrine being followed in our operations. And finally, I want to have a small discussion on the human rights situation in the Naxal corridor. So this will complete the whole chapter. We'll also look at some previous questions after that. So take a short break. It's 5:40 right now. Let's come back at 5:55, 15 minutes. Refresh yourselves, come back. I'll take your questions as well. Any doubts, questions, let me know. I'll pick it up after the break and then we'll wrap it up. It'll take maybe another 1.5 hours maybe. We'll try to wrap it up and then head to the next module. So I'll see you back in 15 minutes.